But first of all, I want to first thank the school administration for this honor, and the faculty and teachers who work really hard to make this such a special place. I mean, I graduated in 1988, yet I can still look around and see some of the teachers and coaches that I had back then, including Dr. Dan McMahon, who's my English teacher, Mr. Marchakitus'88, Mr. T, Father Davian, Father James, Ms. Sherish, Coach Messier, Ed King, and Neil Murphy, Joe Carroll, Pat Smith, and the wonderful music teachers here. It's also great to see a couple good friends, Dave DeLuigi and Mark Melvin, also class of '88, who are probably more deserving of this honor than I am. But Yogi Berra once said, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. But I don't think I've ever had that problem. I think the road to success is filled with construction. It's never easy to get from point A to point B, and there's a lot of detours in life. But if you're determined and you're focused, you ultimately get to where you want to go. I just want to spend the next couple minutes just talking about my childhood and why DeMatha holds such a special place in my heart. Now, I was born in 1970 to a single mom who moved from Pennsylvania down to DC to hide her pregnancy from her parents. And lucky for me, she came from a strict Catholic family, so she knew right from wrong and carried me the full 9 months of term, where she gave me up for adoption, where I was luckily placed with Ray and Lorraine Marchakitus', who had been married for nearly a decade, but were unable to have kids of their own. Now, I grew up in PG County, just down the road in Bowie, Maryland, which at the time was a predominantly white neighborhood, littered with cookie-cutter houses, all named for various letters. Now, my childhood was fairly unremarkable. I remember playing with my friends a lot, hanging out in the neighborhood, and a relatively happy childhood until I got to middle school, where things took a turn for the worse. So at the time, I'd always been a chubby kid, or as my mom liked to say, husky. And everyone likes to pick on the fat kid, and at that time, it happened to be me. I was always big kid growing up, but I think in elementary school I was protected in the neighborhood. No one really picked on you in the neighborhood. But when I got to middle school, it opened me up to a wide range of bullies who took great pleasure in torturing kids younger than themselves. I remember the first couple months of middle school, I got picked on by white kids, black kids, didn't matter. I think most bullies are colorblind. But over the next year or two, I benefited from two things. First, luck. I grew about a half a foot. And second, impatience. I grew tired of coming home with a black eye every month. So I decided to defend myself. I started to fight. I fought black kids, white kids, Mexican kids, it didn't matter. I fought everybody. But I wasn't the aggressor. I was never the aggressor. My dad taught me to try to take care of myself, and I did that with varying degrees of success. A comedian once said, don't sweat the petty things, and don't pet the sweaty things. And I think that's a nice play on words, because if you really believe, I really believe you shouldn't focus on the small things, that instead you need to look at the big picture, and that's where DeMatha came in. Now, despite my portly shape at the time, I was actually a decent athlete and an even better student. So sometime during my 8th grade year, my dad and I sat down to talk about high school. And he said, I think then we decided to make the decision to go to DeMatha. And he said he'd make the sacrifice, because he didn't make a lot of money, but he'd make the sacrifice so long as I didn't get in trouble, no more fighting, and that I did well in school. And I also think at the back of his mind, he was hoping somehow I'd get a football scholarship, just as he had in the 1960s. Now, Martin Luther King once said, faith is taking the first step, even if you can't see the whole staircase. Well, my faith led me to DeMatha and carried with me the dream of being the starting quarterback for DeMatha. A dream that lasted about a couple days, or at least until I walked into the locker room my freshman year. There I saw men among boys, guys like John Jeffries, Phil Bryant, Malcolm Wiley, the late Andre Jones, Garland Hawkins, Don Davis, and even my good friend Kevin Davis, who wasn't as big but was tough as nails. I remember my first football practice, I got hit by a fellow lineman, and I was like Daisy and saw stars. I got up, and I complained to him. I said, hey, this is supposed to be half speed. He said, that was half speed. And that's right then and there I realized the importance of an education. I always say it's better to hang out with people who are better than you, or whose behavior is better than yours, and hopefully you drift in that direction. I mean, my first year at DeMatha was tough. I mean, you all know how it is. You're essentially airdropped into a new school. You might have a dozen people you know and maybe 5 real friends. So you literally have to start from scratch and develop a new network. But I'll tell you, over those 4 years, I learned a number of important lessons that I carried throughout my life and made me the person I am today. I'd say first is the importance of brotherhood. I mean, take a look to your left and to your right, and these are your brothers. They will be your brothers no matter what. It doesn't matter about their race, their intelligence level, or their body type. You're a part of a very special club. And you think about this, only 200, 250 people join this club each year. That's why you see men who are 40, 50, 60 years old still wearing the Letterman jackets and wearing it proudly, because DeMatha holds a special place for them as well. The second thing I think I learned is having an underdog mentality. Now, I hate to pick on LeBron James, because I think he's a wonderful basketball player, but there's a saying, if you ask LeBron for change for $1, he'll only give you back 3/4. Now, whether that's fair or not, I don't think the coaches or the teachers at DeMatha would ever let you give them anything less than 4/4. I recall one time, my senior year, playing a football team in Salisbury, a far inferior team. We walked on the field, we had twice as many guys of twice the size. And I think we were goofing around, laughing during the warm-ups, and Coach McGregor saw that we were overly cocky and grabbed all of us, pulled us off the field, and really lit into us. And if anybody knows Coach McGregor, he was shaking, he had a tear coming down his face, and by the end of his speech, I swear, we thought there was no way we could win at all unless we played as one and as a team. I think the score was probably 40-0 in the second quarter before we realized we'd been duped. The third thing I want to mention is DeMatha gave me a more open-minded view of the world. I mean, as I mentioned before, I lived in predominantly a white neighborhood, and I didn't really have any black friends growing up, at least up to that point. But, you know, what I tell you is DeMatha was different. I mean, I'm not going to glamorize it. It wasn't like, you know, Remember the Titans, where everybody hated each other at the beginning and loved each other at the end. But people really got along. They really did. And I remember having a number of conversations about race and equality with a guy named Hope Glover, who was a little more militant than most, but he really showed me a different side of life and really showed me how to look at things from a different perspective. And I carry that today. I think that's what separates me from some of the people I work with. And then the last thing I want to mention is communication skills. I mean, you really have to start from scratch here, so you have to learn how to communicate effectively with a wide range of people, because most of the school is built around teams, whether it's music or sports or in the classroom. You really need to know how to communicate to people and get along. In fact, I think I had to learn a new language at DeMatha. I remember one time in football practice, I had one of those scopes, you know those little things that you look at, you get at the beach? Well, I had a picture of my girlfriend at the time in a bikini. And Don Davis, who is a mountain of a man, big, strong, black guy, with a heart of gold, who could crush a man in a second. This guy was huge. So he picks up this scope, he starts looking at it, and says, "Damn, March." And it says, no one can pronounce Marchakitus'. So March, he said, "Your girl's fat." And I said, "What?" And he started, and I thought it was kind of funny at first, but he went on to each person, showing the picture and telling him that my girlfriend was fat. And I started getting this rage inside me, thinking that, oh my God, you know, I'm thinking of middle school, all the fat jokes I had when I was growing up. So I went over to him with the intent of, settling my business with a guy who was clearly much bigger than me. And I grabbed that scope out of his hand, ready to, in an aggressive manner, and he just looks at me. He stops for a second, just looks at me with compassion and sadness, a little sadness, and he just puts his arm on my shoulder and explained to me that there's actually 2 kinds of fat, and my girlfriend was the good kind. Warren Buffett once said, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And if you think about things that way, you might end up doing things differently. Well, it's been 23 years since I graduated here, and during that time, I built a nice career on Wall Street. I married my college sweetheart, who I'd been with for nearly 2 decades, and I'm the proud father of 3 kids, 2 boys, and hopefully DeMatha Stags, and 1 daughter who I'll certainly keep away from you fellas. I've worked relentlessly my whole life to try to be a good father, a good husband, and a good member of society. And I think all the building blocks that I learned started here as a student at DeMatha. So as you head off for your Christmas break next week, I ask each of you to just take a moment to reflect about what DeMatha means to you. I'd also encourage you to think about the future. Write down some goals for yourself. Call them reach goals, things that are hard to achieve, but realistic. I've often thought that goals not written down are just wishes. And at the start of each year, I actually go down and write all my goals for the year. And when I go back over the years, some of them are spot on, like the time I wanted a promotion and I got it. And some of them are wildly optimistic. I never did dunk that basketball. But in conclusion, I just want to end with a quote from an American writer named Napoleon Hill, who said, "A goal is just a dream with a deadline." So thank you very much, and God bless.